Thank you. I prefer to stand when I'm talking, so I asked him to have the mic. Well, just a word of warning, I did review this presentation with my colleagues yesterday, and they thought some of my AI-generated graphics were a little bit too graphical, and there was a lot of guns and stuff in it, and they recommended for me to change it, but I didn't, because we are talking about cyber threat hunting. It's hunting season. I'm a responsible gun owner, and my colleagues are in Toronto, so they're a bit soft. But do we have any cyber threat hunters in the crowd? Oh, we got a few. Is that actually on your business card, cyber threat hunter? Yeah? Nice. Because there's not a whole lot of sexiness in cybersecurity, but next to the threat actors that are rolling around in their Lamborghinis with the Bitcoin that they earn from ransomware, I think cyber threat hunters are like the Navy SEALs of cybersecurity, so it's a pretty sexy title to have. I'm not one of them, but that's why I chose this topic. Anyway, we're going to talk about what is cyber threat hunting, why we do it, and what are some of the tools for hunting, and what are we actually looking for. And then we'll end it off with some questions if we can. Are you going to give me the 20-minute warning? There's a horn that you sound, just in case I go over time.
There will be subtle reminders, yes. Or it's not involved.
All right. What is cyber threat hunting?
Yeah.
Do you got a definition?
I guess I don't, but what I do is I build queries and I review SIMs and logs to review against IOCs to determine whether or not we've been compromised.
Exactly. I picked this definition just because of the words, but it's proactively, I think, is one key to cyber threat hunting, and methodically searching for threats within your environment. And so proactively just meaning that you're probably threat hunting if you've been compromised and you're going to be running around, but the point of it is to do it proactively and to exercise your capabilities and get better at it, and also being methodical about specific hunts that you're looking for. You're not just going to go bang into your sim and say, hey, I'm going to go threat hunting today. You need to be methodical about it. So why do we threat hunt? I'm assuming we're all security professionals and everyone has a cybersecurity incident response plan and know where it is in their environment. If not, talk to Drew and Iron Spear back there. They help people with that. There's cybersecurity incident response plan is basically the plan when the crap hits the fan and you have an incident, but at a high level, it's who do you call, how do you communicate, and all that stuff. And then you do a tabletop exercise. I'm assuming we all do tabletop exercises. So this is an excellent exercise to proactively exercise your incident response plan. So you get the executives in the room and you ask them a bunch of questions and freak them out by some scenario that you do. And then you exercise your cyber incident response plan, and then you can refine it and get better at it and do this while you're not under duress in the middle of an incident response. And the same can be said about pen testing. So if you're a pen tester, you're exercising your cybersecurity controls. You're seeing if you can protect yourself or block and detect cyber threats specifically around your control sets. Well, threat hunting is really just preparing to be compromised. And there's a lot of benefits to doing outside of that, but why not exercise your capabilities of cyber threat hunting, looking for an adversary in your network while you're not actually having to look in your network for doing that. So there's a lot. That's one of the main benefits, is just preparing to be compromised. We know that could happen at some time. And then actually practicing your ability to search in your environment and look for the telemetry and look for malicious activities or actors within your environment. But it also, by going through that exercise, gives you the ability to look back and say, maybe you looked for a threat and you didn't have the telemetry, so now you go back and you can increase your telemetry, so it makes your detection capabilities better. Or maybe you saw some anomalous behavior that you wanted to block and you tune up your firewall rules. So there's lots of fringe benefits to threat hunting, including the configuration of your security tools, But I think one of the most important things, and I've got a story to tell about this, is it forces your security team to learn about the environment that you're protecting. And I was working with a customer at one point who was an operational technology supporting critical infrastructure. And the hunt was really to see if they could find malicious remote access into their environment. And while doing the exercise, they learned that there was 2 other remote access or ways to actually access their OT environment that they never even knew about. So by just going through this exercise, they actually learned where they have additional holes in their visibility of actually seeing where people are logging into an operational technology environment that's critical infrastructure. So that's a real life story that kind of puts home the importance of actually knowing your environment. So I need a sip here. So what are some of the precursors to get ready? Well, one, as I said, knowing your environment. I use the VPN example, but do you know where your crown jewels are? I believe the data security, Mel, I think, spoke on knowing where your knowing where your crown jewels are, so you want to protect them. But also knowing what software is running in your environment. What are the administrators doing that looks malicious? Because you're going to come across in a threat hunt, you're going to obviously pick out some of the administrators that are doing some things that look malicious. And knowing where your admin tools are and all these things that you learn about your environment, it's important. But also knowing your tool sets. When you go through threat hunting, you know the obvious tools that you're going to use, your SIM and your EDR, but maybe there's other data sources in your environment that have this data that you need to go looking for threats. So it's a good exercise to do that. Do you have access to it? And also, do you know how to query these tools or use them to effectively threat hunt? So it's a good exercise to not only knowing your environment, but knowing the tool sets that you have available to you. So the process of threat hunting is really first you're defining your mission, right? What is it specifically that you want to hunt for? We talked a couple examples of VPN, or just a lot of customers always ask me, I want to know about lateral movement. Well, you just go into what specific lateral movement are you looking for? You know, RDP access to your network, are they using net.exe or whatever the lateral movement pattern that you're looking for, forces you to research it and then see if you can find that telemetry in your network. So the first exercise is, do I have the visibility within this to actually, am I logging this? Do I have the right profile? And then compare your results, because you've already had to baseline it. You know where this should be, RDP as an example, where it should be happening to and from, but maybe you notice that RDP access is coming in from some remote site that you wouldn't expect it to, and you discover that. So you can either lock down your firewalls, take action. Maybe it's just some administrator that was on a field trip, but the exercise is still good to see that you have the visibility, that you have the ability to look at anomalies, and then take some corrective action. And then again, going back through the process of improving. Did I miss some data sources? Maybe I only had RDP logs on servers and not on workstations, and creating additional log sources where you may have missed that. So what are the threat hunting tools that we use? What's your primary tool that you use for threat hunting?
We're a Microsoft shop, so Defender and Sentinel.
Yeah. Well, I work for Trellix, so we sell the tools. This is why we help people sell the tools that they need for threat hunting. But I think the first most important thing is you have to have some form of threat intelligence or some information that you need to actually know what to hunt for. So some good threat intelligence that you may subscribe to. There's lots of free that vendors provide. There's the Canadian and US government that provide that. Provide advisories for threats, new threats that are coming down, or you subscribe to a threat intelligence service. And then using the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is really an encyclopedia of attacks that can potentially happen, but in that they look for tactic, techniques, and procedures. They define them so you know specifically what you're looking for, and they also tell you on there what telemetry and what defenses you can use to stop these types of attacks. But I'd say in terms of technical sources that threat hunters use is a good EDR that's gathering the endpoint telemetry on the endpoint. And just to emphasize, so you have your typical endpoint protection or anti-malware protection, but an endpoint protection, or an EDR, sorry, endpoint detection response. Does everyone understand the difference between the two? Because I think some people don't necessarily. An endpoint detection response system not only blocks known threats, but it's really tracking telemetry on the endpoint and looking for malicious behavior. And it may not always block it, but it's detecting this malicious behavior, which is, and so if it does detect the malicious behavior, that's great, and you get a security alert. But at the same breath, it's also gathering that endpoint telemetry that you need to do threat hunting. So if you have that in your database, a lot of SIMs we see today, they don't necessarily log. Raf gave a talk last year about Sysmon and using that telemetry in your SIM. But often an EDR will gather a lot of this information for you. And the endpoint is the logical place to look because that's where the users are that are where the attacks happen, right? They happen on the end user workstations on your servers. Excuse me. SIM and log management. Of course, any logs that are being sent outside of your endpoint, or if your endpoints are logging to the SIM, there's lots of different SIM solutions or just logging systems. Your network management systems are obviously key for any network flows and connections. If you were looking for data exfiltration that we talked about, that you're going to see it going out of your network perimeter. Web access, where people are browsing to, is always important. And obviously your IAM systems and your Active Directory. There's lots of others, but I mean, I think these are probably give you a good idea on some of the more basics of threat hunting. Within the data systems that you're using, of course, what is the telemetry that you're looking at? Well, the first place to look is your security alerts. I think sometimes that's often overlooked because a lot of places get 1 million security alerts, but nobody's really looking at them, and that's a problem I think everyone has. But often if you're looking for some sort of, we'll use the example of lateral movement, you have systems in place that may be actually detecting this, but nobody's looking at them. And even if you're not seeing any, potentially these systems have the ability to detect it, but they're not configured correctly. So that's a good place to start. But process execution on the endpoint is probably one of the biggest places. You can see a lot through that. That's also how you pick up on your command shell and your script execution if you want to see PowerShell scripts. A lot of attackers are using the command shell to launch other commands and executables within your network. And keeping track of the arguments within the command shell is also important. Registry changes, scheduled tasks, remote admin tools is something that people don't always have a handle on what admin tools are being used in your network. So it's another learning experience to go through. Maybe monitor that for a while and see if you can see evidence of that happening. But then knowing where that is, then you can track it even closer after. File read-write access, URL access, DNS, and IP connectivity are all important. So what are we actually hunting for? We've given a few examples. Lateral movement, remote access are key. But again, we talk about the sources of these. If you go on to the Canadian Cybersecurity, I think most of us know about these, but these are two free sources of information, just in terms of education and knowing what's out there. You can obviously pay for some threat intelligence through companies like many companies. We offer that service. They can be, you have to obviously have budget for that. But there's lots of open source threat intelligence online. Pick one, and it really, once you get down to it, when you're looking through a lot of this stuff, just having the ability to, of course, search for IOCs in your network, that's the easy part. But as you get down and you start looking for tactics, techniques, and procedures, as an example, this black suit athlete uses RDP and PS exec. Well, if you're able to track this for one threat actor, the common tools that they use, many threat actors use the same tools over and over again. So as you build out your threat intelligence and your hunts, you're not just responding to one particular threat, but you're probably covering off a whole bunch. So again, it's practicing your ability to go and search, detect, and hopefully protect your environment. We also look for specific tools. I mentioned a few of them, but if you look at the top tools that attackers use, A lot of them are the same: Cobalt Strike, Mimikatz, PS Exec, and PowerShell. Like if you're tracking those ones, you're doing a pretty good job. So then you just build on your tooling and get your detections up so that you're actually detecting when these come, understanding the baseline if people are actually using these in your network. Like PS Exec is a tool that administrators may be using. But when you get a visibility into it and you understand your baseline, then after that it becomes easy to detect and do threat hunting missions. So obviously starting out, this is just really around the time and expertise that it takes. Like being able to search for IOCs in your network is one thing, but then looking for tactic techniques and procedures becomes a little bit more advanced, requires a little bit more work and effort, but once you get that under your belt, you get better at it. And they call this the pyramid of pain, but as you can show at the bottom, the hash values and the addresses, but as you're going up and you're starting to look for those tactic techniques or specific threat actors, if you want to attribute some of this, you have to have the proper threat intelligence to look for specific threat actors in your network. Summary, so I'm going to end it on a joke. I was sipping my beer first. I wrote this joke, so don't expect much. So a cyber risk manager, a cyber threat hunter, and a threat actor are out at a conference, security conference like this, and they're going for a beer after. I walk into the bar and they start slamming back the brewskis. And they start beating each other, they're beating their chests, thinking they're manly. And they all find out that they're all outdoorsmen. They all like to get out in the wilderness. And the cyber risk manager says, yeah, well, when I go out in the wilderness, I like to breathe in the fresh air and look at the lakes and the trees. But when I'm out in the wilderness, I'm always prepared. And I always make sure I'm prepared, and I got my checklist of I make sure I got an extra food, I got a compass, and I can start a fire. Just in case disaster happens, I'm always prepared. The cyber threat hunter goes, when I'm out in the wilderness, before I even get out there, I'm researching where those animals are and figuring out the best time, where they track. I know how to track them down. Then I get out there with my bow and arrow and I shoot them dead. And it's like, holy crap. So the cyber threat actor goes, oh, slow down, buddy. When I'm out in nature, I just like to go fishing. Thanks, guys.